Hi guys, today we're going to have a look at an exercise on securing the LAN. So we've got a series of instructions on this right hand side of the window here, and essentially the role here is that you're a ICT consultant, you're working for a company called Infrastructure and Security Services, ICS, and it's providing services to small and medium enterprises in Dublin, Ireland. So essentially, you're a consultant and you have to go into this new bank called Credit Bank, and you need to do some various different networking type activities to help secure their local area networks. So let's have a look at the first task for us to do. It says study the current network, take note of the networks. There's a guest, there's an internal network, and there's a DMZ. So again, we can see in this case, we can see here is our internal network. Okay, all of this section, in fact, subnet 1. It's saying subnet 2 is our guest network, so this is just up here. And subnet 3 is this DMZ, this demilitarized zone. So the first thing it asks us to do essentially in question 1 is to configure the accounts PC with an IP address, a subnet mask, and a default gateway. And it also asks to configure the PC with the relevant DNS server address. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down into this internal network accounts PC. I go into here, go to desktop, go to IP config, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on static. At the moment, we can see that our percentage is 0%. So this goes from 0 to 100. So we're going to take this in parts, guys. So we'll do a small part here, and then we'll take it part by part to get through this exercise, okay? So in all, there's about 15 different tasks for us to do, and then there's a couple of further questions, so we'll take it one step at a time. So the first thing is to put that correct IP address on. So it's asked us in this case to put an IP address of 192.168.1.50, and it's asking us with a subnet mask of /25. Just be careful with our subnetting here to make this, to ensure we get this correct. So 255.255.255.128, and our default gateway, which it's giving us, so it's 192.168.1.126. Of course, I could check this on the default gateway. So the default gateway is this Dublin router, and we can see that it will be under this fast Ethernet 0/0 interface. In fact, what we can do is, if we have a quick look at this, we can see there's actually what's called router on a stick working here. In other words, we can see we've got sub interfaces. So we'll come back to that later, because again, that might need to be looked at when we go to troubleshoot certain parts. But for now, let's go back to our accounts PC, and let's finish off. So it's saying we've put in our default gateway. The last thing it asked us to do was put in the relevant DNS server address. What's the relevant DNS server address? Well, our DNS server looks as though this one's here. This is our local DNS server, and I can see that on this particular server, I can see the IP address is 1.6. So that's the DNS server I'm going to need to put in for my accounts PC. So I'm going to say 192.168.1.6. And once I click on the close here, I should see my score ticking upwards. And I can see indeed it's at 9% for doing that exercise 1. So that's got us off to a nice, good start. But let's continue on. So question number 2, it says, as a security measures, Credit Bank would like to configure Dublin router with an enable secret password of Cisco to help secure the router when moving from user mode to privilege mode. So in a real world case, Cisco wouldn't be a password we should use, because again, it's very, very limited in characters. Again, it's used in defaults, typical default scenarios. But in this proof of concept, this will do fine for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the Dublin router. I'm going to click into my CLI, and I'm going to essentially click enter a couple of times, go to enable, conft. We'll notice that it didn't ask us for any password when we went from enable to privilege mode there. And what I'm going to say is enable secret, and then I'm going to say the password of Cisco and press enter. If I exit again, back out of here, back to user mode. When I now type in enable or en to move from enable into privilege mode, it's going to prompt me for my password. I'm going to type in Cisco, and it's going to allow me to move into that. So task number 2 complete. The next task number 3, it says create a VLAN 99 on switch 2 and name it management. And I give a little tip here. Tip: the name is case sensitive. So again, this name of this VLAN is going to be called management with a capital M, and it's case sensitive. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move over to my switch 2, which is this guy over here. And I'm going to go into the CLI and I'm going to essentially run that command. I'm going to go enable, I'm going to go conft, and in this case, I want to create a new VLAN. So I'm going to go, so in this case, I could have checked beforehand. I could go show VLAN and I could see all of the different VLANs on the switch. So here I can see, now again, I like to make this nice and big so I can see all of the VLANs. Here we can see we've just got one VLAN and there's all, so it's the default VLAN, and all, looks like many of the ports here are in this default VLAN. What I'm going to create now in a moment is a management VLAN. Okay, that we can use this management VLAN to manage the switch. Maybe this is for an administration purpose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to conft, configuration mode, and what I'm going to say is I'm going to say VLAN 99, and I'm going to name it with a capital M, management. I'm just going to make sure that I get my spelling correct and press enter. Once I've done that, I could do a show VLAN. So using that do command to use my privilege command, I could do show VLAN, and I can see indeed now I've got that management VLAN set up. There's no ports associated as of yet, but I have indeed created the VLAN. So all good so far. It now tells us that we need to configure a management interface IP address on this switch. So this is a switch virtual interface that we'll essentially be setting up. So what I'm going to do now is going to go back to privilege mode, configuration mode, and then I'm going to say interface VLAN 99. Okay, and it actually gave us a little tip. If I read further along the lines here, it says configure the IP address under interface VLAN 99, because that's the next thing we need to do. We need to obviously find out what the IP address of this is. So straight away I can see that the interface has just come up. It's a virtual interface that we're setting up. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the IP address on. So I'm going to say IP address, and it's asking me for 192.168.99.11 with a subnet mask of /25, which is 255.255.255.128. Isn't that right? For our /25. And then what I'm going to do is, well, it's already come up, so I don't need to do a no shutdown. So the next thing that we need to do, guys, is we're going to need to assign the IP management server on Fast Ethernet 02 on switch 2 to VLAN 99. So essentially what I want to do now is on this switch number 2, I want to move this IT management server into this VLAN, so VLAN 99. So that will allow me to maybe communicate from this management server to the switch to maybe potentially manage it later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my privilege mode. I need to now go to, I'm going to assign the IT management server on Fast Ethernet 02. So I'm going to go conft, I'm going to go interface Fast Ethernet 0/2, and what I'm going to say is I'm going to say switch port mode access. So again, this is going to be an access port. I'm going to just put it on one VLAN. So I'm going to pop switch port mode access, and then I'm going to say switch port access VLAN, and I'm going to say 99 to move it. Now I can see, you might have noticed there, it's going to amber, so STP is running now. That will go green in about 30 seconds time, but now I should have configured this guy, this IT management server, to be in VLAN 99, okay? So the next part of this exercise is we're going to set up switch 2 to be configured for remote access and SSH only access. So there's a number of steps involved in getting SSH to run. These include creating a domain name. In this case, it's going to be of our bank name, which is creditbank.ie, with the .ie signifying Ireland. We're going to create a local user database. Okay, we're going to add a user with admin level access, privilege, the highest privilege level. We're going to put a username of administrator and a secret password of Cisco there. we're going to configure 0 to 15 lines, so 15 simultaneous connections could potentially SSH into this switch at any one time. We're going to generate a key size of 5112, so we'll leave this as the default, and then it's asking us to create some timeouts of 30 seconds and authentication. So if, for example, I get the password wrong a number of times, it will force me to basically re-authenticate. It won't allow me to keep making lots and lots of changes. So you should now be able to log in. So at the end of this step, we should be able to log in using this management server. So if I go to the management server at the moment, and for example, if I try to ping between, let's go to the desktop and command prompt, let's try ping. Let's do an IP config first. Let's see if I'm on the same. So I'm on the 192.168.99. So I can see that I should be in the range of basically the same subnet, if you like, that this switch is on. So I can see I'm on the 192.168.99 subnet. Let's see if we can ping our switch that we put the management address on a moment ago. So 192.168.99.11. Can we ping? So let's give it a second. The first one sometimes can fail due to an ARP, but let's see. Okay, so fantastic. So that first one failed, but we got then 3 replies. So it looks good. We've got connectivity. So what we could try is we could try to do an SSH-L, and let's see, at the moment it asked us to set up the administrator. So administrator, and then 192.168.99.11. Now this shouldn't work obviously because at the moment I haven't configured this. So again, what I'm getting is straight away it's saying, sorry, the foreign host is saying, no, you cannot connect using SSH to this switch room. So we can connect from this computer remotely and remote access into this switch. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to obviously use my commands here on switch 2 to basically get this enabled for SSH. So I'm going to leave my IT management server for a moment, come back to switch 2. I'm going to go back into privilege mode. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to configure various different things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a domain name. So I'm going to say IP domain name, and it asks us to put in the domain name of creditbank.ie. And then what I'm going to do next, guys, is I'm going to set up the user accounts that it asked me to do. So it asked me to set up a username of administrator and a password of Cisco. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say username, administrator, and I'm going to say, now, the next thing that I need to just take into consideration is it asks me to put an admin level access to the highest privilege level. So these privilege levels go from low to high. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to put the maximum or the highest privilege level on this administrator account. And the highest privilege level is actually level 15. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say secret and then the name of the password that we're going to use. So we're going to use Cisco to log into this switch remotely. So once I've done that, that's the first couple of steps. I now need to get into my under the virtual terminal lines. So what I'm going to say next is line VTY 0 to 15. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on just SSH. So I'm going to say transport input. And if I wanted the SSH and telnet, this is where I could use my context sensitive help to say, for example, all. But in our case, we don't want to turn on telnet because that's an insecure protocol for remote access. I just want to use SSH. Once I do that, I'm going to press enter. I now need to ensure that I allow just the username that I've just created up here, my administrator and the password of Cisco. So what I'm going to say is I'm just going to allow the local users or the local database users to be able to log in remotely. So I'm going to say login, local. Once I've done that, guys, I now need to exit out of this mode. And what I need to do is just check to ensure that I've got a key size. So generate a key size of 512. So in our case, this, and again, it said you leave as basically as default, but I'm just going to check that. So the command to check that is crypto Let's use our context sensitive help. So crypto key, generate RSA, which is the name of the algorithm, and essentially in this case we can press return. It's saying, hey, what size bits do you want to use for your key size? I'm going to leave it as 512, and it's basically saying that's cool, leave it as the default. So that's at this moment in time, guys, we've now set up all of the various aspects that we need for SSH. Also, it did have a couple of optional extra things. So for example, configure an SSH timeout. So while we're here, we might as well do this. So I'm going to say IP SSH timeout. And what I'm going to say is, and this is going to be in seconds. So what I'm going to say is 30. And then also it asks us to say to add authentication retries of 2. So only allow 2 retries if you get the password wrong. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say IP SSH authentication retries, and then this should be the number of retries. So in our case, it's 0 to 5. It's saying I'm just going to give a value of 2. Okay, guys, so at this point, we're now finished our configuration for SSH. What I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to try and log in from our IT management server. I'm going to try and do what we did before. So before we could ping, but we couldn't actually SSH. So what I'm going to do is hit the up arrow. I'm going to basically log on using SSH with this administrator into this IP address, which is our switch virtual interface of switch 2. Once I do that, I should get prompted for a password, which is good news. I'm going to type in my password of Cisco. I'll try that again, CISCO, and I'm in. I'm now configuring. I'm at the privilege level. Notice the way I didn't get dropped into user mode. I got dropped in directly into privilege mode. So now I could say, for example, show run to have a look at my running config of the switch, my configuration that I've done so far. Okay, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to pause at this point in time. I hope this has been beneficial for you. And in a moment, we'll get started on part 2. We'll take up where we left off on exercise 7. Okay, thanks for viewing, guys, and see you soon.